Hello and welcome to ASMR Ghost Stories. We're just going to go ahead and dive right on in, so grab your headphones and enjoy The Uninvited Possession. Before the advent of online auction houses such as eBay, amateur treasure hunters had to scour out of the way antique shops or sift through cobwebbed attics and basements full of other people's junk in the hope of unearthing a priceless painting or a valuable ornament that the current owner would hopefully part with for a small sum. But now a free bargain hunter sees themselves as an amateur antiques expert, and every seller prices their bric-a-brac as if they were family heirlooms. Some shrewd sellers have even come up with a novel method of getting an edge on their competitors in the potentially lucrative online auctions. They claim that their item, be it a doll, a painting, or even a games console, is haunted. Many are clearly trying it on or have their tongues firmly in their cheeks, but to read some of the descriptions and the earnestness with which the seller states their case, one has to wonder, are the attics and basements of the U.S. and Europe being emptied of genuine possessions that are possessed? And if so, does the legal term caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, now assume a new meaning? Arguably, the most fascinating and unsettling items on offer are the battered dolls and eerie paintings, which must surely give even the most skeptical buyer cause to pause and wonder. Portrait of a Killer. In 2003, a Florida couple listed a macabre oil painting for sale on eBay entitled Stricken Life, which was said to have been the work of a wife murderer who later committed suicide. It was a portrait of an anguished-looking young man, smartly dressed in shirt and tie, with blood spattered to one side of the canvas, and the spookiest part of the matter, say the owners, is that a second face can be seen in the blood, and it's screaming. On the reverse was attached an equally unsettling self-penned poem. Scraping the sides, running then slowly to a crawl, readjusting the pace numerous times, and reaping and sowing this rotten crop, traffic signs leading me to the Messiah, of red lights struck by a notion to bury the living and save the dead. Knowing that many would laugh into their laptops at such a loopy story, the buyers added a lengthy description explaining how the painting came to be in their possession and assuring potential bidders that they would provide a complete provenance with the work, including signed and notarized depositions by my wife and I, a local publications account of the night of the murder-suicide. A copy of the release we had to sign before we could purchase the house, all pertinent names and information, as well as anything else we can come up with that pertains to the subject. End quote. They claimed that it was one of the items left behind by the former owner of their new home, which they had purchased at a greatly reduced price because it was rumored to be haunted. He was the son of a Cuban national who had lived in the house since the mid-1970s. The only other facts that they knew about him, or that they were prepared to divulge online, was that his name was Harold. He had been born in 1949 his bedridden wife with a shotgun after he had been diagnosed with brain cancer and would not be able to look after her. The sellers take up the story. Quote, our initial thought was to get rid of the painting, but our teenage son thought it was cool. So on the wall it went, along with an interesting story for our friends. Then the strange sounds in the night started. Always in the night, when it was the darkest. My wife and I were in the master bedroom. It was after midnight, and it was our third night in the house. I had just dozed off when boom! The explosive sound of a shotgun blast jerked me awake. Seriously? My heart about to explode out of my chest. I sat up in bed. My wife still slept. After securing the house, I came back to bed thinking it was a dream. Several hours later, I was awakened again by the most ungodly howling I had ever heard. End quote. This was their dog. When the husband went to see what was troubling it, he found the dog howling at the painting. Disturbed and unable to sleep, he took the painting down and locked it in the closet. Then a couple of nights later, his wife woke screaming. She said she had seen a woman in a wheelchair at the end of the bed, but there was no sign of her when the husband finally rubbed the sleep out of his eyes. Then the electrical problems began. Every bulb in a chandelier in their living room burst. The TV would turn itself on, and a woman's voice could be heard calling from the master bedroom. It was then that they decided to list the portrait on eBay, the only picture Harold is thought to have painted. The whereabouts of the painting are not known, and the successful bidder's name has never been disclosed, but the former owners should be getting a good night's sleep from now on. The haunted painting. Haunted paintings have been the subject of several traditional Victorian ghost stories in which the main protagonist becomes transfixed by a picture which appears to have a life of its own. Whenever the owner returns to admire his purchase, he is convinced that the figures have moved. Such stories have become a cliche, so when buyers saw a painting advertised as haunted on online auction house eBay in February of 2000, many must have thought it was a joke. But the anonymous owners, a couple from California, had the last laugh when it sold for over $1,000. The question that remains unanswered, though, is whether this was a genuine paranormal artifact or merely a clever sales pitch. The picture depicted two children, and although there was very little remarkable in the subject or the matter in which it was painted, the seller claimed in their sales pitch that it possessed a distinctly singular quality. Quote, when we received this painting, we thought it was really good. A picker had found it abandoned behind an old brewery. At the time, we wondered a little why a seemingly fine painting would be discarded like that. Today, we don't. One morning, our 4-year-old daughter claimed that the children in the picture were fighting and coming into the room at night. Now, I don't believe in UFOs or in Elvis being alive, but my husband was alarmed. To my amusement, he set up a motion triggered camera for the night. After 3 nights, there were pictures. After seeing the boy seemingly exiting the painting under threat, we decided that the painting had to go. End quote. The only clue to the origin of the mysterious picture, which is thought to date from the mid-1960s and the mid-1970s, are the words, "The hands that resist him," inscribed in pencil across the back. The sellers felt it necessary to add a disclaimer either to indemnify themselves against possible future litigation in the event of supernatural phenomena, or perhaps to make it more appealing. Quote, by bidding on this painting, you agree to release the owners of all liability in relation to the sale or any events happening after the sale that might be contributed to this painting. This painting may or may not possess supernatural powers that could impact on you or change your life. However, by bidding, you agree to exclusively bid on the value of the artwork with disregard to the last two photos featured in this auction, and hold the owners harmless in regard to them and their impact expressed or implied. End quote. This was significant to encourage a flurry of inquiries, which seems to have set the sellers on the defensive. Their response was, quote, to deter questions in this direction, there are no ghosts in this world, no supernatural powers. This is just a painting, and most of these things have an explanation. In this case, probably a fluke light effect. I encourage you to bid on the artwork and consider the last two photographs as pure entertainment, and please do not take them into consideration. End quote. But several potential purchasers reported that the power of the painting extended to their own computers after viewing it online. Quote, 7 emails reported strange or irregular events taking place when viewing this image. The seller reported after the sale had closed, and I will relate 2 suggestions made by the senders. First, not to use this image as the background on your computer screen, and second, not to display this image around juveniles or children. So who paid more than $1,000 for an otherwise unremarkable painting? Who else but a shrewd art dealer who knew a good investment when he saw one? There is a postscript to this story. Following the sale, the BBC became interested and managed to track down its artist, Bill Stoneham. He explained how he came to create such an unsettling picture. Quote, when I painted The Hands That Resist Him in 1972, I lived in an old stagecoach station deep in the woods of the Metalia, I don't know how to say it, surrounded by 600-year-old oak trees and a stream filled with ancient fossils. I used a family album photo of myself at age 5 in front of our Chicago, Illinois apartment. The hands are the other lives. The glass door, the thin veil between waking and dreaming. The girl doll is my imagined companion, the ally or guide of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Some of what I paint resonates in other people, omitting their inner door or basement. End quote. Ghost in a Bottle. Without doubt, the most unusual, spooked item to be listed online has to be the ghost in a bottle auctioned on eBay in December of 2004, which a national newspaper claimed had aroused the interest of an agent representing the singer, Michael Jackson. Whether Jackson put in the winning bid is not known, as the buyer's identity was never revealed. The bottle was the property of retired mill worker John McMiniman from Spamount, County Tyrone, Northern Ireland, who discovered it cemented into a bricked-up window of their reputedly haunted mill house, but held on to it for 25 years before deciding to cash in. It was described as being at least 100 years old and said to contain the imprisoned spirit of a ruthless landlord who had committed suicide after getting a young girl pregnant and then abandoning her to her fate. Angry locals then hounded him to his death. Apparently, a local priest had failed to exorcise the ghost from the house, but had managed to force it into the bottle, presumably by promising the disembodied drunkard that stronger spirits awaited him in the bottom of the bottle. Incredibly, the story caught the imagination of the Northern Irish radio presenter who tracked down and interviewed McMiniman's sister, Marie Maguire, who told the listeners that the bottle contains black dust and is sealed with a page of the Bible. She revealed that when her family moved into the house, they knew it was haunted. Indeed, that was why the previous occupants left. Maguire went on to describe childhood experiences, including waking up, screaming that somebody was looking at me in bed. Her brother had reported something coming up the bed like a cat's paws. She concluded by saying that the family wanted the purchaser to treat this genuine Irish ghost in a bottle with respect. Voodoo dolls. There are now so many haunted dolls for sale on eBay that they have their own listings category. Some dealers specialize in these novelties and curiosities, which vary from battered, blank-eyed babies that would send any kitty screaming to its mummy to sweet old lady dolls designed to serve as surrogate grannies. Some sellers claim that they created their dolls to capture the spirit of a loved one or a friendly ghost, which they now offer as house guests for those in need of companionship or protection. But even the cutest come with a warning that they are not to be given to children or people of a nervous, imaginative disposition. The following is typical of those on offer. Quote, Granny is extremely active and looking for a new home. My grandmother always collected dolls, and as a child I never knew why I wasn't allowed playing with her special dolls until they were given to me after her passing 2 years ago. End quote. According to the seller, dolls became animated after dark, talking and laughing with each other, which the new owners might find unsettling if they are not prepared for it. She claims to have captured the secret life of the dolls on infrared video and EVP recordings. The pride of her collection contains the spirit of a 92-year-old widow named Granny, for whom she provides a biography. The old lady was said to be a kindly, wise woman who kept a garden to raise vegetables, to feed the needy, and herbs to cure ailments, until she was crudely murdered by an intruder. After her death, the seller's grandmother and an aunt, who was a medium, made the doll in the old lady's image right down to the moles on her face and a miniature copy of her wedding ring. Her clothes, too, were copied from those that she had worn on the last day of her life. Revealingly, no mention is made of the method by which the spirit was summoned and bound in the doll's body. But we do get a list of Granny's likes and dislikes and of her nocturnal activities. Quote, I hear Granny at night rocking back and forth in her rocking chair. I have found her moved in different positions. Sometimes it looks like she's trying to stand, but can't get up by herself. I have seen her as a full-bodied apparition. She looks through my kitchen cabinets, moving dishes around and moving things in one place to another. I have heard her humming and whistling. She starts about 1 a.m. and can go on for hours sometimes. I have found Granny in different rooms from which I put her and moved from one place to another. Sometimes the look on her face turns from a smile to a frown. I have tried to do EVPs on Granny, but it seems to mess up the tape in the recorder. I don't think she cares too much for modern conveniences. Granny is a loving lady who wants a family to look after. She loves children and animals. She needs a good home where she can stay and be needed and loved for the wonderful woman that she is. If you feel a strong connection or bond to Granny, then please bid. You could be the one destined to watch over her. Let her help you and watch over you as well. Please remember, do not let anyone touch Granny until she is used to you and her new home. End quote. The seller shrewdly adds a warning intended for those who might demand their money back if the dolls don't perform on command. Quote, my dolls are not evil. Some have more attitude than others. They have their own unique personality because they were all living, breathing individuals at one time or another. End quote. It is evident from the buyer's responses that they entered into a spirit of the sale and treat the dolls as nothing more than new age novelties. One buyer wrote of a doll she had bought called Tina, quote, it turns out she is quite a talker. She calls us mom and dad. It's really cute. We found out that there's another spirit in her home that she does not like. She gave us his name and everything. We thought there might have been another one there, but we didn't know for sure. She's going to help us try to get rid of him. And oh, she scares the dog a lot. End quote. Others wrote to tell the doors which locked by themselves, computer breakdowns, lights switching on and off, and of fleeting sightings of the spirit leaving its host. The Dybbuk box. The whole subject of haunted possessions invites a healthy dose of skepticism, but it is worth noting that one item has attracted so much attention that it has become the subject of a website devoted to uncovering its mysterious origins. In September of 2001, it is claimed that among the items included in a house clearance sale in Portland, Oregon, was a box containing an evil spirit known in Jewish mythology as a Dybbuk. The former owner was said to be an elderly Jewish immigrant who has been the sole surviving member of the family to be liberated from a Nazi concentration camp in Poland. With no reason or desire to remain in her own country after the war, she immigrated to America with her only remaining possessions: a small trunk, a sewing case, and the Dybbuk box. It was her granddaughter who had organized the sale and who related the story of the cabinet to a prospective buyer. She confided that the old lady had kept it locked and out of reach of curious children. When asked what it contained, she would spit 3 times through her fingers and mumble something about a Dybbuk and Kesselim. The granddaughter was unfamiliar with both words. Her dying wish was that the box should be buried with her, but Orthodox Jewish tradition forbade that, so it was included in the sale. It was listed as an antique wooden wine cabinet, although one of its subsequent owners had speculated that it was too small to contain wine, bottles, and glasses would not fit in the rack. However, it may have had a perfectly innocent origin as a liquor cabinet in which it could be stored a decanter, shot glasses, and tumblers. Or it may have been a container for sacred religious scrolls, such as would be needed by persecuted people who could not worship openly at a synagogue. Inside were 2 pennies dated 1928, 1925, 2 locks of hair bound with string, one fair and one dark, a small statuette engraved with the Hebrew word shalom, which means peace, 1 dried rosebud, a golden wine cup with a black cast iron candlestick holder with octopus legs. The buyer stored it in the basement of his furniture store, where he intended to refurbish it as soon as he found some free time. But before he could do so, he he became uncomfortable in its presence and decided to sell it on. Apparently, all 9 bulbs in the basement had burst, and 10 fluorescent strip lights, even 4 feet long, had blown simultaneously. His female assistant had been reduced to a gibbering wreck by something that she had seen and which had locked her in while he had been away. She refused to return to work. 2 weeks later, he examined the box more closely prior to working on it and discovered an inscription on the back, which he later learned was a Jewish prayer of consecration and protection. When he presented his mother with the refurbished cabinet as a birthday present, she seemed pleased. But within minutes, she claimed she suffered a stroke which left her partially paralyzed. The only means she had of communicating was to write shakily, and the message she scrawled was anything but reassuring. HATEGIFT. It was sold this time through eBay to a young man who began to suffer recurring nightmares of being attacked by an old hag. When he gave it to his sister and brother-in-law, they returned it complaining of having a strikingly similar dream. The young man in turn sold it to a middle-aged couple who left it on his doorstep soon after without asking for their money back. Bad luck seemed to plague him from that day on. The lease on his store was terminated without explanation, and all the fish in his aquarium died for no apparent reason. While researching the legend of the Dybbuk, he fell asleep at his computer and awoke to feel something breathing down his neck. He then watched incredulously as a hulking shadow lurked down the hall. That did it. The box was back online and bought by a college student in Missouri who was made aware of its unhealthy reputation, but who bought it nonetheless. Within days, he was keeping a journal detailing the uncanny events. Quote, Sunday, 31st of August, 2003. Over the last week, some interesting, though possibly coincidental items of note have come up. Firstly, I share a house with 6 other people who have been taking turns sleeping with the box in each of our rooms. 2 people are now complaining of burning eyes. 1 is listless and depleted of energy, and another became spontaneously sick. In retrospect, I would say it was allergies. A few days after these ongoing annoyances started, the air outside our house was filled with small bugs for several hours. A Friday, weird summer stuff. Last night, Saturday, we discovered that the box, now located in the back corner of the house, had come mostly open, though it had been shut, and it seems unlikely that anyone could or would have touched it. Wednesday, the 10th of September, 2003. Though it seems impossible to prove that the box is a direct cause of misfortune, we have definitely seen a tidal wave of bad luck. Strange odors now permeate the house. The dumpster out back overflows with trash and decay. One roommate suddenly got bronchitis, and I broke a finger. Several mice have died in the engine of one car, and more electronic devices seem to be dying every day. Xbox, toaster, TV, and watches. Within months, he had it relisted for sale, adding, quote, I don't really want to talk about anything between September and January, so I'll just say that I'm selling the box now for a couple of reasons. Around October the 6th, I started feeling bad with trouble sleeping. This problem had persisted through today. I live alone now, and as of late, I have noticed that I've been replacing a lot of burnout light bulbs and getting many unusual car repairs. Transmission fluid was burned out of the reservoir. I've started seeing things sort of like large vertical dark blurs in my peripheral vision. I smell something like juniper bushes or stingy ammonia in my garage often, and I have no idea what from. Most disturbingly, last Tuesday, which was January 27th of 2004, my hair began to fall out. Today, Friday, it's about half gone. I am in my early 20s, and I just got a clean blood test back from the doctors. Maybe it's stress related. I don't know. Anyhow, for personal reasons, I very strongly do not want this box anymore. I hope there's someone on eBay that will take this thing off of my hands. I would just throw it away in the woods or something, but I know there has been some interest in it in the past. The history of the box. The previous owner hadn't simply destroyed it either for fear that by doing so he would free the evil within, or because he sensed that there was something to be gained from passing it on. In February of 2004, the box was acquired for $280 by its present owner, who made great efforts to learn its history. This is what he claims he has discovered. Quote, "The box has been used in seances by the Jewish lady who had immigrated from Poland. In November 1938, she and her friends had come to the realization that their harmless parlor game had succeeded in establishing contact with a malevolent entity which desired entry for itself and other spirits into our world. It would not let the group rest until they had acceded to its demands, so they planned to invoke it one last time and trap it in the box by means of certain spells and incantations. The artifacts, such as the braids of hair and the pennies, were part of the charms that would bind it in the box. But the ritual did not go according to plan, and although the entity was eventually subdued, it managed to reap destruction on a scale unprecedented until that time. The 10th of November 1938 was the night of the Nazis unleashed Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, when their thugs burnt synagogues throughout Germany and smashed the windows of Jewish-owned shops and businesses. The whole episode has echoes of Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Spear of Destiny, with a touch of H.P. Lovecraft thrown in, and it is highly suspicious that the silver-plated wine cup it contains was made by the Leonard Company, whose factory was in Oregon, the town in which the Tippett box was purchased. The real significance of these haunted items is the speed with which such stories are replacing traditional ghost stories and urban legends for a new generation. Ghost in the machine. But who could safely scoff and say that the next time their computer crashes while they are online, it isn't because they have inadvertently downloaded a cyberspook? But be very careful the next time you curse your computer. You may be invoking an evil spirit. We all have damned our computers when they freeze up or crash, losing valuable data, but we don't seriously believe that our PCs are possessed. But there are frustrated users who would swear on a stack of Bibles that their hard drive is haunted. Down south in God's own country, Savannah, Georgia, the Reverend Jim Peasborough regularly takes it to his pulpit to preach against that spawn of Satan, the World Wide Web. He warns of how computers have opened yet another door through which Lucifer and his minions can enter and corrupt men's souls. Peasborough contends that PCs have enough storage capacity to house evil spirits, and that members of his congregation have come into contact with a dark force when they have used their computers. He tells of how happily married men have been drawn to pornographic websites and forced to witness unspeakable abominations. Some might argue that it is not Satan who forces these men to explore their dark side, but human nature, and that Satan is merely a convenient excuse for them to absolve themselves of the responsibility of their actions. But it's not only men apparently who have been tempted off the straight and narrow from the path of righteousness. According to the minister, even God-fearing Christian women felt compelled to visit online chat rooms, which have turned them from desperate housewives into foul-mouthed fornicating sinners. The minister tells of how one woman wept as she confessed to a feeling of being overtaken when online. In this particular case, the crusading preacher took it upon himself to fight the good fight. He visited the woman's home where the computer talked to and openly mocked him. It even typed by itself, calling Peasborough a weakling, and told him that your God is a damn liar. Then, without being instructed, it spewed out pages of doggerel, an experience that most of us will be familiar with. But the minister is adamant that this was not a simple malfunction. He claims to have had an expert in dead languages examine the text. The expert asserted it to be a stream of obscenities written in a 2,800-year-old Mesopotamian dialect. Reverend Peasborough is also confident that many school shootings like the tragedy at Columbine were perpetrated by computer buffs, having no doubt that computer demons exerted an influence on them. So what is it to be done about this invasion? Is exorcism the only answer? According to the Reverend Peasborough, there is a less drastic solution. Technicians can replace the hard drive and reinstall the software. He says with confidence, getting rid of the wicked spirit permanently. Amen to that. Last one. Phantom phone calls. If it is true that ghosts are merely the discarnate spirits of the living, that they possess the same personality that they had had in life, then it is to be expected that the recently deceased would try to communicate with us using the telephone or even email rather than by table rapping and ectoplasmic manifestations favored by Victorian spooks. Julia Kay's 5-year-old son had shown no interest in the family phone until one day when he stopped playing to answer it. Only it wasn't ringing. At least his mother couldn't hear anything. The child picked up the receiver and entered into a lively conversation, then paused to pass the receiver to his mother, who was in the kitchen preparing dinner. "Who is it?" she asked him, wondering if it could have rung while she was too distracted to hear it. "Grandmom," he answered. "What does she want?" "She wants to talk to you. She wants to say goodbye." His mother took the phone and anxiously put it to her ear, but she heard nothing. She was relieved and uneasy at the same time. Her mother had died 5 years earlier, and she had never talked about the old lady to her son because she felt that he was too young to understand about death. He had not even mentioned her name until that moment. There was no mistaking the voice on the other end of the line which woke Michelle one Sunday morning. It was her father, who she describes as having a great bear of a voice, like the actor James Earl Jones, who lent his voice to Darth Vader in the Star Wars films. She was recovering from surgery at the time, and he began by asking how she was feeling. He also inquired whether she had heard of the death of 2 people they knew, but she hadn't, at least not yet. Before he hung up, he assured her that life would improve for her and told her that she was not to allow the illness to sap her strength or her spirits. When I hung up the phone, it was as if I stepped from another level back into this one, she later wrote. The call had occurred on the 13th of September, the 2nd anniversary of his death. And that's it for today's stories. I hope you enjoyed. Any thoughts? Comment below. And if you do like these kind of videos, hit the like button and the subscribe. I do upload twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. If you have an idea for a future story, then comment below. And again, thank y'all for listening. Hope y'all are having a wonderful day. And don't forget, stay just a little scared.